like a cat, it was a present from my brother. I read a lot of books, but I couldn't see between the lines. I'll have another cup of coffee if you don't mind. Well, her hair is as black as an alleyway, and it used to be. It's exciting.
And now we're live. Look at that.
Completely prepared this morning. There's not a thing about me that is unprepared, except for that I am the reason we started the show. How many minutes late today, Mike? This might be a new record.
14.
Chris, you should know that we've done how many episodes, Mikey?
This is episode 37.
We've been on time once. It happened a couple days ago. And so
we were auditioning. We were auditioning replacements for you.
My entire life I've been trying to. I thought my greatest contribution to music would be my retirement. So I think if you guys could retire me, that would be awesome. But
so
really,
tell us all about why you're late, because that was exciting stuff. Exciting stuff.
Yeah, because ironically, one of the reasons Chris is here to talk, besides laugh with us knuckleheads, is to talk about his book and his very unusual journey through cancer to health. And so it's only fitting that I've been open about my ongoing vocal issues of the last 3 years, which have kept me from performing. And I finally, my psychiatrist had worked with a lawyer who had dystonia and couldn't practice in court. And he was able to get the Botox injections in the neck, which sounds rather gothic, but it's supposed to free up all that area so that you can perform. Now, I said this to my friend Randy Rosenberg, who's a neurologist from Philadelphia, and he recommended the same treatment when he heard my voice. And I said, man, Botox injections in the neck, it sounds so gothic. And he tilted my chin up and he said, you have a scar on your left side of the neck from a surgery and a scar on the right side of your neck from a surgery. It'll hurt less than that.
Right. By the way, when I was doing medical stuff, Botox is like crazy, amazing stuff. Like it has cancer curing purposes. It does. I mean, the cosmetic side of it is like the least of what Botox can do.
Well, but I got to tell you, if I could sing and have a young looking neck, that would just be amazing. Like my face I'll still have an old face and I'll still have old hands, but the neck is going to look fantastic.
You could be a neck actor. I could see a neck double.
A neck actor. Yeah,
neck double.
With all the wisdom and gravitas of 61, but with the neck of a 30-year-old.
And that's the kind of thing you want to tell your grandkids. I was a neck double. I love that.
I got so many things to tell the grandkids I will never have.
And you were playing piano, you said? You went and you sang and you were so excited. You sang
right
it was
through the
great.
Intro of the
show.
I got lost in it. That's why I was late.
I was calling him. I'm calling him. I'm texting him. I'm like, are you alive? Tornadoes flammed through here last night.
Yeah, I just get all the texts, and Chris has threatened to replace me with Fred LeBlanc. And I got to tell you, I don't think Fred drinks coffee, so that wouldn't work.
Probably.
But it's great to have you, man. And I am so sorry that I was late.
Not a problem at all. Not a problem. Thanks
Well,
for
let's
having
tell
me.
our friends.
Yeah.
Let's tell our friends a bit about you before you get to talking. After the flood and Katrina in 2005, I was at a backyard party around Jazz Fest in 2006, and I was playing a set with John Boutte with me on guitar and John singing. And afterwards, a fella that I didn't know from Santa Monica, California, said, "You guys are great together. Y'all should make a record." And being a natural born smartass, I said, "Man, I just lost everything I own in the flood. I can't even make rent, let alone make a record." And he just smiled and said, "Well, how much do you need?" And I named a figure, and he said, "Okay, I can get that together for you." And he went away, and I thought, yeah, right, I've heard that before. And then 2 weeks later, he called me and he said, "Where do I send the check?" And I was speechless because he didn't say, "I want you to sign a contract." He didn't say, "I want to hear the music first." He didn't say, "I want any control." He said, "Where do I send the check? And promise me on your word as a gentleman that you'll pay the money back off the sale of the CDs." And so we made John Boutte's record, Good Neighbor, and finished off my record, Exit to Mystery Street, which restarted my career in life. And Chris was part of a group called the Threadheads, and the event we had played was called the Pottery. They say because of a typo on the first flyer. I say because somebody was drunk. But they are people who come to New Orleans from all over the world for Jazz Fest, as far away as Australia, my friend Tom Younger. And they didn't know each other at first. They just would meet up at Miss Lena's stand, or they meet at the Yakamine Lady, or go see Troy at the Congo Square stage. Let's just all meet. Let's be a community of people from all over the world who just love New Orleans music. And that's what happened. And then after the flood, one of them said, we can't just do this for fun, let's help. So the Pottery was started to raise money to help musicians, and it's done that 10 times over. I think well over $700,000 in the last 15 years, as did Chris, along with my friend Byron Townsend, talked about starting a not-for-profit record label. And Chris became the head honcho of the label. He didn't want to be the president of the label. He was the head honcho. Now he runs a successful environmental real estate planning business, and he's a real businessman who makes real money and real decisions. But he devoted an enormous amount of time to listening to the music and the stories of the New Orleans artists who had lost their stuff in the flood. And the whole purpose of this not-for-profit record label, which I'm pretty sure is a new word, oxymoron in the English language, was just to help. And in the 15 years since the flood, almost 16, they've released over 70 CDs and well over $700,000 raised towards just getting the music back out there. And in my opinion, changing the face of New Orleans music for generations to come. After having done all that a few years ago, Chris got a different challenge, and he'll talk about that in his book and his journey.
Thank you guys for having me on. As you were talking about the story of how we met, I was telling Mikey this before we went live. I now have not been to New Orleans since April of 2019. This is the longest stretch in over 30 years that I haven't been in New Orleans, and just want to tell you both and anyone who's listening how much I miss it. And I know I speak for all the Threadheads around the world, how much we miss being in New Orleans, seeing you guys play, eating the food, seeing each other, seeing all the friends. It's really been a big hole in our lives, not having that.
I haven't been able to play since the first surgery back in November of 2018. Maybe one or two gigs where I tried and it just didn't really work. So it's been about 3 years for me. So I really miss it too. And I'm hoping that as the world returns to playing and Threadheads return to New Orleans, that this treatment I'm hoping to get will allow me to do that again, to sing again.
Before we talk about my book and all that stuff, I'm curious, just talking about Jazz Fest for a second. You guys are much more in the know than those of us who don't live in the city. I mean, we're hearing that the Jazz Fest is starting to book some of the big name acts like Elvis Costello and Los Lobos. You guys think it's going to happen in October?
I think that there's a time frame that the bigger name acts. Well, first of all, the really big name acts, the Bruce Springsteens, the Paul McCartneys, the Who. They've already informed their booking agents they're not rolling until 2022. So, but the Elvis Costellos, those guys are willing to do it, but there's like a cutoff time. They need a commitment. So Jazz Fest is going out on a limb with the bigger name acts to start trying to solidify a lineup. And I understand they've started reaching out to local acts, though not offering contracts yet, because they're trying to just be as cautious as possible, because it's not about New Orleans numbers. Our numbers are good, and we've been, especially in the city limits, been very good about trying to mask and social distance and whatnot. It's not even about the numbers around the country, it's about the numbers around the world. Because people come to Jazz Fest, it's a global event. Right. It's not just a New Orleans event. It's not just a United States event. It's a global event. And so that's a pretty big picture they're watching. And these are the people that love the music just as much as the fans. I mean, let's start with Quint Davis. He's gung-ho and wants to do it no matter what, because he loves music with the passion of a teenager. Fortunately, he's got people around him that love him too and want to keep Jazz Fest going, and are trying to say, let's just make sure that everybody's safe. Let's make sure everything is good. So I think it's the right amount of caution that they're proceeding with. I think they're as hopeful as you are that there will be a jab. And I think we all hope that the pandemic is way more under control by the fall.
You know, Mark, we were talking about. I had a friend of mine that we were talking, and insurance
Who's
is
Mark?
going to. Mark
Who's
Rosenbaum.
Mark?
He just put that text that was up just now.
Oh, you read that stuff. I got to put my glasses on so I can read that stuff, man.
He was talking about insurance being a problem for Jazz Fest this year, and yes, we've been talking about that too. You're not going to be able to get COVID insurance. That's why they've been looking
No,
for the carve
doesn't
outs.
even,
Right,
yeah, they won't even give you that.
right. And now,
And
now,
then,
now, going into 2019, they had insurance that was sort of hazard insurance that sort of helped keep them covered.
but they're not even going to have that. Like
Right,
what we grew up with was we called it rain out insurance. If a concert gets rained out, the act normally gets paid. These days, and this isn't just Jazz Fest, this is what across the board what promoters are doing around the country. There's no more rain out clause. If it gets rained out, you don't get your money because
the
that's
bigger
where
acts
it's
still
at.
get half. You know, they get their
And I
deposit. They get to
think
keep their
maybe you'll get a portion, the small acts, but it used to be the full price, which
right,
for a small actors really keeps you going out there on the road, especially.
right.
So it's all the paradigm has shifted, and who knows what is to be, and we all are hoping for a jazz fest.
Although
You know,
I'm fine with them just wait until 2022 and just trying to do it right and not trying to just sneak
me
something in
too.
before the
To
end
be
of the
honest,
year.
as much as I would love to see my friends in October, as much as I would love to see Jazz Fest and go and eat the food and all that stuff, I'd kind of like to see it wait until 2022 and just have
Because
one
it's
of the
not
most
even just a
glorious.
pandemic. You got hurricane problems and things like that. I mean, trying to throw it in October is really, you know, over
Yeah.
2 weeks.
I,
I don't know.
anyway, yeah, I would like to see just like the Mardi Gras after Katrina. I would just like to see the most gloriously heartfelt jazz fest in the history of Jazz Fest in 2022.
Right, right.
So you guys may not know this about me, but I'm sort of cynical. I know that comes as a surprise to you, but
I'm done.
yeah, I know it's shocking, right? But I think that, one of the adages I always bring up is follow the money, or it's all about the money. And I just think there's too much money to lose by not for Jazz Fest, for the Jazz and Heritage Foundation, for them to not try to do this, and for
Well, I mean,
AEG.
if they go all in though, if they go all in right now, then it's a lot more money to lose. Should it not
Yep.
happen again? Because they've already been through that. They already took a bath, year before last. So last year. So you got to be sure. You got to be sure.
Yeah, you saw
Well,
Shmoo. Sorry, she's already got her
go ahead.
ticket. I was just going to say, Shmoo says, she feels like she's on the same page, but she does have her ticket just in case already bought. You
Yeah,
know, so
yeah. We're all hopeful, and
Yeah,
that's part of our conversation today is being hopeful.
yeah.
yeah, I have my ticket too. I want to be there. Anyway, let me tell you my story quickly. What I also want to tell you, I'm going to tell you guys this first. And Paul, you know this, that you and I are going to be on a little mini tour in September, on the East Coast in Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York, and Boston. And I don't have the dates in front of me, but those are going to be some house concerts that you and I are going to do. And I'm going to read some snippets from my book, which just so happen to have here. And that's going to take up about 5 minutes. And then Paul's going to sing for about an hour and a half. And I think I got the better end of that deal.
Well,
That I just,
hopefully with I with the doctor I'm seeing tomorrow, that will be a reality. I haven't sung for an hour
I
and a
hope
half in a
so.
very long time.
But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. Anyway, so my story, I'm going to do this in the 30-second version. 4.5 years ago, in October, Halloween Day, October 31st, 2016, I was shockingly diagnosed with third stage pancreatic cancer. And when you hear those words, you immediately think death sentence. And the statistics back that up. 10% of pancreatic cancer patients last as long as I have, which is almost 5 years now. So I went through hell. And Paul, you were kind enough to let me co-write a couple songs with you on your album Life is a Ride back in March of 2017. But I found a way to not only survive but to thrive. I mean, I'm feeling great. I mean, I'm turning 65 this year. I have my normal aches and pains, and I'm getting old. But cancer-wise, I'm doing great. And I did a mix of conventional and unconventional. I learned to not necessarily listen to my doctors. I learned to ask them questions. I learned to rely on friends and family and to cry and laugh and live life. And I was getting so many calls from people about what I did. I decided to write the book, which came out in August of last year.
One of the things you just
Yeah.
said that's so important to learn, and Mikey has been through quite a bit himself with his own health. He can talk about it if he wants to or not. But what I've learned, you have to question your doctors, because what was happening with me, especially at its worst, I literally could not get a single word out. It felt like someone was strangling me, to the point where my friend Nunu in Chicago, when my voice finally broke down, he thought I was having a stroke and was going to take me to the emergency room. Like, he and a friend were physically trying to drag me to the emergency room. And I had to convince them that everything was functioning. I just didn't, this mysterious thing was happening. And because a lot of doctors haven't seen it, like I had Ludwig angina, and when Caput said I was in dental school, and in 35 years of practice, I've never seen it. Something like, it's like the boogeyman.
Wow.
So I'm like the king of rare shit. And it was Craig Klein who said, "Man, I think you have this thing called dystonia." He heard me trying to speak, and he'd done some research on it. And so I went to a really experienced doctor who said yes, but then a younger doctor, a psychiatrist, who wanted to put me on Zoloft. And I'm just like, "What, do you guys have a bucket of that stuff, you know?" And then I go to a neurologist, and she's young, and she doesn't hear it because maybe she's only heard about it in med school, and she looks it up on the internet, and she wants to put me on Zoloft. And I'm just like, "Man, they must really take you guys out to nice dinners with the Zoloft company, because no, I don't want Zoloft. I'm not, yes, I'm a little stressed. I deal with that in many different ways. This is something different. This is my voice not working when I go to perform. That's a whole different thing." And so anyway, it's you have to sort of go no to the doctors. I know me, and this isn't right for me, and I have to go another direction. And fortunately for you, it was not even an option, right? Chemo was not part of your genetic makeup.
Yeah, I tried chemo for a few months, and it was not only not working, my cancer got worse, but chemo was killing me. And I thought in March of 2017, I thought I was done. And that's when I quit chemo. At that time, I had no plan B. It was just, I'm not being flippant about it, but I really thought, okay, if I'm going to die, I'd rather die of cancer than die of chemo, because I was so miserable. But circling back to what you just said, and Mikey, I'd like to hear your experiences on this too. Doctors, and there's so many doctors who are great. I'm not here to slam doctors at all. There's some really, really tremendous ones, and there's some bad ones, just like in any profession. But they practice medicine. They're medical doctors. They practice medicine. They don't practice
Right.
wellness.
Right.
They don't practice nutrition. They don't practice
Good point.
exercise. They practice medicine. So they know what they know, and there's many things they don't know. And when you realize that as a patient or as a partner of a patient, things can get better. They're not gods. They know a lot. They know more. Oncologists know more than I do about pancreatic cancer, but no one knows more than me about my body. No one. And that's what
Right.
I learned.
I kind of learned
Mikey,
something similar.
remind me
Yes.
what you went through.
So I had the open heart surgery, and then I wound up with
Right,
a
right.
because I had it when I was young too, because I've had heart problems since I was a kid, and so they gave me one when I was 18, and then 25 years later, I was 42, 43, and it was time to replace the one that they had done, and then I had actually had a second valve that was a problem, but they'd put it off in the beginning because it was a mitral. I don't know if people know much about the hearts, but the mitral is a small little valve. Lots of people have mitral regurgitation, and they were just hoping that it wouldn't be a problem. Well, it turned out that it was a problem too. So they had to go in and replace two valves in the heart. And while I was under, they gave me heparin, and heparin didn't agree with me. It's supposed to be a blood thinner. Apparently, during the year that I got my surgery in 2012, there was a batch of bad synthetic heparin that went out, and several people in the Nashville area had similar experiences tied to me. They called it a heparin-induced thrombocytopenia, which basically just blood clots that form. So during the surgery, I come out of the surgery, and the doctor tells me that my foot is dead. They figured this out because I couldn't wear a sock. They put that stupid sock on you, and to keep your feet warm or whatever like that. Every time they put it on me, I would just be like, "You got to get," I thought I was on fire. You got to get this thing off me. So one of the nurses figured out that something must be wrong, and they figured out that my foot was actually dead. There wasn't any blood flow going through my legs, and they panicked and figured out how to get the blood flowing again. But the next day, the doctor's like, "Yes, we're going to have to amputate your leg at the knee." And I said, "No, we're not amputating nothing. I wanted to have some other doctor's opinions and this, that, and the other." And so long story short, I decided to keep my leg, which was the long way around this whole process because now so then they're like, all right, well, we just have to wait until your foot actually, the pieces that are dead start to show that they're dead so that we can cut those pieces off, which is 6 to 8 month sort of process. So went through that part of the process, did all the things that had to be done, but then on the other end of it, just doesn't want to heal. Still dealing with some of the issues with it, wanting to completely heal. There's still clots and stuff in my legs that need to be figured out. And long story short, we're on our way there. But what I did notice is that you mentioned the young and the old doctors. The old doctors are the ones that tell me to keep my leg. You want to keep your leg for as long as you can. It's going to take time. But the young doctors just want it to be done. They just want to be
Yeah.
like, it's like,
They
let me
just want to move you out.
what's the easy solution? Let's
Yeah.
chop off your leg, move on. Now, if I were to go that route, there's no guarantees that I wouldn't still have some of the similar problems that I'm having now. But at that point, I have no leg, and I'm still having the same issues. But they
I
just want
did
to
have
move.
one young doctor. The guy who did my spine surgery was young, and he was great. Dr. Celestri was great. But in dealing with this, because it's kind of a mysterious disease and not a lot of people know about it, the first thing they reach for is, let's grab you some Zoloft. I'm like, so I can be zonked and forget that I have a problem? That's cool. I'm in rock and roll, man. You want to get me high and let me forget that I have problems? That was the whole purpose of my 20s, and my 30s.
Right.
So yeah, sure. Thanks, Doc.
Well, when I got here, too, you were saying about knowing your body. When I got here in 2019, I'd already been in wound care for 7 years. So luckily, the doctor I had here at Ochsner would listen to me when I would tell her. It's funny because the way that you approach wounds is either dry or wet, depending on how you're, what you're trying to accomplish. And I know when we need wet bandages and when we need dry bandages because I know my body and I know how it reacts. And so even to this date, the doctors over at Ochsner let me help suggest what direction we go in, and usually it's the right choice. So I got to give them that.
Part of successful treatment is having confidence in the doctors and the treatment too. So that's great that you found somebody like that. And so where did you have to go to find that, Chris? Wasn't in America.
Yeah, you went out of the
No,
country.
in fact, 4 years ago at this time, I was in Germany in April and May of 2017. I went there for 3 weeks and got some treatment that most of which you can't get here, although I've since learned that there are doctors sort of working underground in the US and Mexico. So I probably could have stayed, I just didn't know it at that time. But yeah, I mean, the stuff that we call alternative here in the United States is not really alternative in other countries. They allow it in other countries, but here it's illegal. And it's illegal because the insurance companies have such a clamp over the type of treatment we get. The pharmaceutical companies have so much power. Again, I'm not here to slam. I know I'm going to sound like I'm slamming a lot of people. Pharmaceutical companies have done some great work, but they're not perfect. They've bad work too, and a lot of criminal work. Insurance companies are way too powerful. I would love to see a paradigm shift in everything, not just universal health care, Medicare for all, which I think we need, but also more about wellness, more about reducing obesity in this country, which is a huge problem.
And that comes to the food manufacturers there. The obesity issues
Right.
stem back to that. So even our food production
Absolutely.
here is a problem compared to a lot of the places. It makes you less healthy. I mean, the food production thing is just, all the corn syrup and other, sweetener
Oh,
type
sure.
stuff.
And
Just,
and this is probably my last point about this because I really would like to get your listeners to smile and
yes,
have a good
yes.
time instead of talking about all our diseases. But there's a direct correlation to what's been going on with COVID. I mean, all three of us can rightly blame Trump for what a shit show that was. But obesity, which Trump is a fat fuck, but Trump wasn't responsible for the obesity problem that we have here in this country, which
Right.
there's a direct correlation to how poorly we've done in COVID. Lots of reasons why we've done poorly, but
Point out that it's
obesity
sort
is
of
one
not
of them.
fair to label him a fat fuck, because I know some fat fucks that are really awesome people. You really have to label him. You have to complete the label and say he's a narcissistic, toxic fat fuck.
I like
Gotcha.
that. Yeah, I'll go with that.
Gotcha.
That has my vote. Um, by the way, so
And that's, of course, with
I
all
actually
due
have,
respect.
Of
That's with
course.
all due respect.
With all due respect, of course.
by the way, you guys don't know that I'm going to run for governor, but we can talk about that. Governor of
Really?
California, I'm governor.
No
Yeah,
kidding. So
we
Gavin Newsom, get
we-
out of here. See, so
Well,
Gavin
we-
Newsom is an interesting guy, right? Because, on paper, he seems good. I've seen him in interviews,
He's really handsome. He could
He's
play
handsome.
the governor of California. When he's no longer
he-
governor,
he
he'll
could
play
play.
the governor of California.
right.
he's a rich, good-looking guy.
But he has been so
He's a-
tone deaf in so many ways. It's just been kind of
Well,
Well,
I
he just
think
let's backpedal. He just said he's a rich, good-looking guy. He was bred to be tone deaf.
I guess you're right. But Christine,
Yeah.
like
He
he was
knows
going to
the-
correct me on a few things there. It looked like he had some thoughts.
Well, no, not correct at all. Just add some stuff that a lot of policies that Newsom's done, I agree with, and I'm a Democrat. He's a Democrat. That's my issues with him are more. He's tone deaf. He shows a lot of poor judgment. But the two
Yes.
words that I think of when it comes to Gavin Newsom are Kimberly Guilfoyle. Now, you may know who Kimberly Guilfoyle is. Don
Of
Trump's
course we do.
girlfriend.
Of course we do.
Girlfriend.
But she dated him,
New-
right?
New- they were married. Newsom was married.
They were
to
married.
Guilfoyle.
Oh
And
my
I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ.
But
You
then
know,
you got to think
what-
about
what were you
Carville.
thinking?
But look, think about
Kimberly
Carville
Guilfoyle
too.
clearly goes for the most
Yeah.
attention in a relationship. So what I'm looking for next is Kimberly and Caitlyn Jenner are going to be together. They're going to couple up for the governor's race, because that's the most attention that Kimberly Guilfoyle could get. And she's way more masculine as a woman than Jenner is as a woman. She can out masculine him. She's going to make him look really feminine if she's his paramour.
I will say they do seem like an odd pairing because like I've seen him in interviews and he seems sane. I've seen him do interviews and stuff, but she just you go, what did you guys ever talk, or was it just sex? I mean, what
It
was
was
the
clearly
thing?
just that. It was clearly just like, I mean, he just let her yell things while he was doing other things to her. And he didn't realize she was yelling, this horrible right-wing shit. And then he woke up and he's like, oh my God, she should be with Donald Trump. Let me move on to become governor of California and save my life and so on career. But if a woman's wild enough, a man will listen to her yell anything.
She's got tarantula eyes too, right? Like the tarantula eyes thing where they wear so much eye makeup that it looks like
yeah.
spider.
Oh yeah, she's got enough eye makeup there that she could have she could make up almost an entire prom with what she's got on her face.
Right. It's crazy. Like, what is the allure of
By the
tarantula
way,
eyes?
Speaking of proms, your son's starting college? Chris?
Yeah, isn't that wild? Yeah. He's
Yeah, so it's like,
he's off to the Netherlands. He's going to school, going to University.
adventure.
I'm not going to pronounce it correctly, but University of Twente. It's about 2 hour train ride outside of Amsterdam. So
He'll
yeah,
probably
I'm headed
never make-
over in August.
He's never coming home, is he? He's going to be there overseas forever.
In fact, I'll
You know-
be visiting him soon.
There's a part of me that breaks my heart that he's going to be living that far away, and there's a part of me that's thrilled for him because it's going to be just such an amazing adventure for him. But yeah, he's
There's a
off and
tremendous
on.
part of me that is just completely envious of him.
He-
I wish I were living there.
Yeah. I mean, I look back now. He's 18 and a half. I look back and I think, okay, there were many times in his 18 plus years where the crowd goes right and he goes left. And this is one of those things where, everyone's going to college in the U.S., all his classmates, and he just said, I'm going to go here. So yeah, he's
So
off.
before we get too far off your book, I'd like for Mikey to just take a moment to read some of the comments because you were worried that it was too heavy. You were talking about your journey, but so many people have their stories to share about the health system in general and about cancer, their journey through cancer, and you're getting a lot of support from our listeners who are in 100% agreement. That I've seen comments go by. I have the thing where it's there for a second, it's gone, but Mikey can pull up YouTube and read them. And there's people who are saying, my friend Lorelei Clark said that, if she hadn't challenged the doctors, she would have died of breast cancer years ago. Another friend just posted, he's been in recovery for over 2 decades, and you absolutely have to be your own advocate. And those kind of things keep coming up. So people, not only, I think that, yeah, we all want to laugh. Of course, we all need a laugh, but some honest truth from the heart and some hope that goes along with it is an important message, because people carry their journeys inside because they so want to be whole again. But it's a club that when they meet other members of the club, that's when they're at their most whole. When they meet the people who've suffered loss, when they meet the people who've faced it, that's when, again, they have a community. And it's a community of people who understand. And I think that's what just came out in all the comments.
Well, one of the things I noticed that's sort of a theme is, the interesting thing is you hear all this propaganda and hyperbole about, the American healthcare system and, one, how it's supposed to be the greatest in the world, but also two, how, if the government takes over, this that problem and the other problem. Well, when I was in wound care, I can tell you, after, you wind up without work for 9 years, or at this point, 10 years or whatever like that, you wind up getting some disability. And because of that, I was on state-run health insurance, and my doctors would tell me over and over again, thank goodness that you're on this Medicaid stuff, because if you were on Blue Cross, I couldn't get you what you need. It would be impossible for me to get what you need. This is the doctors just telling me, but because you're on this Medicaid disability, Medicare thing, all I have to do is code it up correctly, and I can get you what you need. So
My friend, my friend Ross Perlmutter, who lives in Toronto, he's Canadian. He had heart surgery a few years ago. They, of course, have national health insurance. And he told me, he said, how much it cost me to have my surgery? I said, no, what? He said, $7. And that was to pay for parking.
right.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
right? I mean, it's crazy.
Right. One of the
Yeah.
issues that I had was because they took so long. I couldn't get my health insurance. My surgery was in 2012, which actually is the year that Obamacare actually got passed. But when I had to have my surgery, it hadn't been passed yet. And basically, the hospital, I had to go and work a deal, sign a loan, and all this other kind of stuff, put down $5,000 to be able to get my heart surgery. And even getting the doctor to do that took almost a year just to get a doctor who was willing to work on me and, at a discounted rate. And, without all the extra insurance and stuff, because I couldn't get covered, because I had this issue. As soon as I had a heart surgery when I was 18, now I'm pre-existing conditions, could never get covered. And that extra year actually caused damage to my heart now that I have AFib. And it's because it went on too long.
Wow.
And my heart's misshapen. So something that could have been solved, like you're saying, we were talking maybe before the show, I can't remember now, but just about how important, preventative stuff is on just keeping an eye on everybody, finding things before they get too bad, being able to take care of things before they're major problems.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll repeat a little of what I said earlier. I'm a Bernie Sanders Democrat. I really love Bernie.
How can you
But
not?
I don't think Bernie goes far enough when it comes to health insurance. I want more than what Bernie wants. I don't
Yeah.
want just Medicare for all. I want wellness. I want better eating. I want more exercise. I want us to get healthier as a country.
I think based off of things that he said in the past, I think ultimately that's what he wants too. But Bernie's always been, I read this article about him. Nobody got more amendments in the 2000s added to bills than Bernie. He's a better deal maker than anybody gives him credit for. There were
Yeah.
all of these. There's a few examples I remember from this thing in particular. One of them was when they passed the new bankruptcy laws. Bernie is the guy who made it so that you can get a free credit report every year. That was one of the amendments that he added to it. So once a year, you can go get your credit report. You don't have to pay for it. I know it's a little thing, but it's something that you wouldn't have
No, that's
gotten if
good.
he hadn't been there advocating for it. And he's the king of all these amendments. They called him the Amendment King. He had more amendments in the 2000s than like several other senators combined, like the next handful of them combined. So I think he's more pragmatic as well, because even you look at it, even the things like you're saying, he doesn't go far enough, but you would listen to him, you'd think he's some sort of radical if you listen to even the media talk about what he wants to do,
Yeah, he's not a radical when you look at what other countries are doing
Right,
because they're so far ahead of us.
right. Not to
But it's like
mention,
alternative medicine here. We don't allow it here, but it goes
I
on
mean, in
everywhere
some
else.
ways, when they started doing during the Bush years, they started playing with stem cell stuff, and we had to turn it all off here in this country because of religion. They came in and said, "Oh, we're not messing with stem cells. That has to do with."
Right.
Meanwhile, the people that are still doing research on that, some of the they're growing limbs and stuff out of this stuff now. I mean, we could easily.
I'm sorry to interrupt. My friend Joe Holtzman in Chicago just posted, "Oops, you do not get over losing someone to cancer."
Yeah,
He lost his
Very
wife
true.
Angie year before last. It was actually one of the last shows I was up in Chicago for. That's when my voice went out. My God, I was playing Angie's memorial, and thank God Joe had brought another singer that Angie liked, Jenny Beneman, who's a local in Chicago, to sing, because she sort of carried the night. Because I mean, I was singing okay, but it was starting to go in my singing voice, and I couldn't speak off stage. It was so weird. It was so weird. Anyway, so yeah, so here we are, and there are lots of people chiming in about their
There we are.
experiences. So that's life. You see, everybody wants to talk about the fun, but deep down, everybody wants to know that you've been scared too, because it feels less alone. If we're just honest about the hard
Absolutely.
time,
and
and you
Freddie's going
weren't.
through
Yeah.
it right now as well. I think Freddie was talking. He's got his significant other's kind of dealing with lots of health issues, so he's dealing with healthcare directly. Actually, from what I understand, I mean, I don't know everything. He'd have to tell us a little bit more, but I do know that the musicians clinic helps him out a lot, which is
Tommy's been had a hard go of it. It's a long story. God bless them. They've both been beautiful about it, and yeah, it's ongoing for them. But that's again the thing about having Chris on to talk about his book is that it gives people a chance to say, yeah, we're dealing too, and thank you for being honest because I'm less alone now, and that's what Chris's book has done for a lot of people already. That's what the reviews are saying, and I believe you're going to be a part of a new collection. Excerpts from you? Is this going to be excerpts from your book?
No, no, this is a new book that we have. It's it's a collection of essays coming out, I hope, in July. Let me remember the name. It's called The Epiphanies Project 20, 20, I see, I can't even remember the name of it, 20 Revelations. But there's 20 different writers who all talk about an everyday epiphany they had in their life. And I'll tell you quickly how this book came about was I realized when I wrote mine, I wrote it so quickly that I forgot to include a couple things. And one of the things I forgot to include was this epiphany I had when I was staying over at my girlfriend Susie's house. And I woke up in the middle of the night thinking that this was right when I thought I was going to die 4 years ago. And I thought, maybe if there's a God, God put me on this earth to learn about love. And I have learned about love through sitting here sitting next to me with this person sitting next to me.
Yeah.
And thankfulully, I was right and I was wrong. I was right about, yeah, I did learn about love being with Susie. That part of the epiphany was right. The incorrect part was that I thought I was going to die, if
Well,
that's
no,
any.
once you
So,
learn, no, if you hadn't learned the epiphany, God might have had to take you out so they could send you back more evolved so you could learn the epiphany. But you learned the
maybe, yeah.
epiphany, so you get to keep on learning. You see, you got it.
Yeah,
And God went, oh,
yeah,
cool, you got it. Keep on learning. He's doing well. He's a good
yeah.
student.
and I'm going to
Because
share.
that's
And you
certainly what
shared
I
it.
learned in time. I learned humility. I learned to slow down and be in love and live in love and accept that pace that is slower. Aaron Neville's retirement letter said it all for me. The pandemic reminded him that time is short. He wants to spend what time he has left in a less hurried way with the people he loves. So he's not going to tour. And I think that's a gorgeous reason to not tour. He's given plenty to the world, and time's short, be with who you love, and try and enjoy your life.
Yeah, that was a beautiful letter he wrote. Really, really beautiful.
Well,
It
my daughter
was.
lives in California now. I have to make sure when you run for governor that she's, helping you out there. Get her volunteering.
Well, you heard my entire platform. I'm just going to keep repeating Kimberly Guilfoyle, Kimberly Guilfoyle, and
Single
I get
issue voters, that's a thing now. Single issue,
yeah.
Let's just get the single
I, I,
issue.
fi- I figure I can get about 20 votes. That'll get me about 20 votes.
At least
So
you guys
how
get some
much of you?
crazy, like the elections in California blow me away sometimes. You'll have like, wasn't there like somebody on the, just the last governor ones that was like, it was, was she like, I saw a video of her running around trying to get votes, and it was her and her hippie husband, who was sort of her campaign manager, and she was just running around dancing and doing weird shit, and telling everybody
Well,
she's gonna.
I don't know if this is what you're talking about, but we had another recall election, I guess almost 20 years ago. Gray Davis was our governor, and he was screwing up, and so we recalled him, and the voters put in Arnold. That's how we got Arnold Schwarzenegger, was through a recall election. That's why Caitlyn Jenner is
Right.
she thinks she can be this year's Arnold, and I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, all joking aside, I think Newsom is not going to get recalled, but it's making him sweat a little bit.
And
Yeah.
it probably should because, like we said, wow, he's done some incredibly stupid things over the last year that just almost no excuse. It's like you're smarter than this, or are you? You know.
It's interesting
So,
because I mean, it's hard being a politician right now. I'm not putting Trump in a whole different category because well, how did we describe it? Not just a fat fuck, but a
Narcissist.
a
narcissistic.
toxic, narcissistic fat fuck.
Right. So he's in a class by himself. But we were putting Andrew Cuomo on a pedestal a year ago, and now we're finding out
I would
shit
feel
about
bad about
Cuomo.
labeling all the toxic. I would feel bad about labeling all the toxic, narcissistic fat fucks, but they would all think I was labeling them anyway because they're narcissists.
That's right.
Very good.
So, your book, when you first got diagnosed, you'd never written songs before, and you started sending me lyrics. And the first one was, I believe, Life. No, the first one wasn't Life is a Ride. It was
The first one was Tears of Healing.
Tears of Healing.
Um,
Life is
yeah,
a Ride
you
was
and I
actually
were.
the last one. We had raised
Life is
money
Right was
to
the
go
last one.
in, and we were going to record an album in one day so we could get it pressed and get it in your hands before you went over to Germany for your treatments and just to show our love. And it was a beautiful project. And you sent me Life is a Ride as I was playing a gig in Texas, getting ready to drive 10 hours home to do the record. And I heard it and I said, well, it's got to be on. And I wrote a little bit and then I ran out of time. I had to get on the road and I just sent it to Alex McMurray. And he came back with a beautiful rest of the song, the bridge, and then a coda, which I'm convinced Alex wrote just so he could put as many lyrics into the lines as possible so that I would have to remember them. I think he did it just to put a stick, and I have to remember them every time I play them. But then we wrote a few songs for that record, and it sort of whetted your appetite for writing, and the idea came to you to chronicle your journey, and became the
Yeah.
book Life is a Ride.
Yeah. I mean, I started early on after I got diagnosed in 2016. I started writing a blog, and it was more because it was what the words you just used, Paul. It was I wanted to feel less alone, and because I was so scared. So I wasn't doing it for any other reason other than I just needed to get stuff down on paper, and then I decided to share it. And so when I sat down to write the book last year, I had these blogs that I could go back to, which were great because I have a terrible memory when it comes to facts from a few years ago and stuff. So it helped as sort of, oh yeah, that's what happened, and this is the order in which it happened. But yeah, I had never written a book, and now I've got a second one coming out, and I'm actually thinking about a third one. So we'll
That's
see.
usually how it happens.
Did you
That's
have any
great.
problems
It's
with the
fun.
blank page? I mean, how did you get started?
Uh, no, I mean I didn't because I felt like I had to write that book, Life is a Ride. I felt like I had to write it, and so I wrote it like a maniac. I wrote it in like 3 or 4 months, and I
What was
really
driving you? What was compelling you to write it?
I wanted to do it for my kids. Um, I mean, it was sort of a challenge. I wanted to see if I could do it. I knew I had a good story. I mean, it's not a story that I wish I didn't have to live the cancer journey, but I did live it. So and surviving pancreatic cancer is very rare. So the challenge was not coming up with a good story. I had that. It was, how do I get from point A to point B? How do I document this journey? And I didn't know if I could do it. But I was very disciplined about it. I sat down every day for an hour and a half, even on weekends, and just wrote. And some of it, I'm sure you guys must see this as songwriters once in a while. I mean, I look back at some of the stuff I wrote, like, well, this is shit. This is absolute shit. but then you just keep writing, and you keep writing, and you keep refining it, and refining it, and refining it. And
Did
then,
you have an
yeah,
editor?
yeah. I actually had three editors. I went through an independent publishing house, and they had three different editors review it. One guy who's
Nice.
actually he's a former sports writer who goes to Jazz Fest all the time. He lives in Mississippi, and so he really resonated with the story since he was so familiar with New Orleans and Jazz Fest. So I
Mm.
got lucky on that editor. All my editors are great,
Well, that's what
really
Stephen
good.
King talks about, the editors and how important,
Oh
the editors
yeah,
Oh
are
yeah,
for just helping you
yeah,
get your point across. And
yeah.
absolutely, they were important. They made I'm not going to say it's a great book by any means, but they made what I wrote much better, much better.
I saw this at one point. I saw this thing about Raymond Ray Carver and his books, and how he had several. There was a certain editor that seemed to just get his stories across better than some of the other editors that he had, and some of his bigger hits. I'm trying to remember who his editors were. I was trying to see if I could look it up real quick, but they
I
do
mean,
mention in particular.
but
Go
there's
ahead.
always, throughout literature, Maxwell Perkins took the somewhat mad ramblings of Thomas Wolfe, which were trunks and trunks of beautiful prose that he would have scattered about his room, and he would organize them into the books that became Look Homeward Angel and You Can't Go Home Again. And that same Maxwell Perkins became Jack Kerouac's editor and took sheets of butcher paper, because Kerouac would get on speed and he would put butcher paper in so he wouldn't have to keep changing paper, and he would just write on a 100-yard scroll of paper on his books. And Max Perkin would come gather the scrolls and tidy them up and put them out as books. So editors are incredibly important with the writing process. What they give the writer is the freedom to be a bit more loose, to be a bit more creative, to let that part of you come out so that the editor can come in and go, okay, these bits are lovely, but we need to tighten up here for the readers. And a good editor-writer relationship is when you trust that editor to do that.
Right, and you trust their decisions, because sometimes I'm sure it can be hurtful when they come in and you're like, "Wow, that part really, I thought it was saying something, and now you're telling me it's not. Should I rewrite it, or do I need to lose it?" I mean, is there that kind of moment that's kind of, I thought that was important, but you're saying it's not. I don't know. I know as songwriters we have those issues. It's like, I really like that line. You sure we want to lose that line? I really thought it was good. You know.
Yeah, were there
Well,
sections you argued for?
what I learned was that I didn't have much ego. My friend was the one who did most of the editing, and she would say, "Well, there's a lot of repetition in here," and the truth was she was absolutely right. I was repeating myself a lot. And so she just made it a leaner book. It
Hmm.
went, I think now it's like 35,000 words, and it started at about 50,000 words. So she cut out a
Mm.
lot. And there was a couple of things she cut out, like, whoa. And I realized, you know what? She knows this business far better than I do. And so I just took my ego out of it. But one other thing I'll say is that in the process of writing, because I still don't consider myself to be a writer, but I mostly, but I learned that how to write in my own voice. I can't be a Paul Sanchez or Mike Mayhew or anyone else. How do I speak? How do I talk? What's the story I want to say? And I learned how to do that.
For songwriters, it's the same thing. It really is. It's finding your voice and
That's the secret to good writing,
right.
is to make it sound like you talking to your friends. It's just talking. You're just sharing.
And however you get
Yeah,
your point across. I mean, there's obviously
And
Everybody's
your
got
book
their own
does that.
style.
It is very much like a conversation with you about your journey through, back to health. A journey that inspired me in my own journey. When the body started breaking down and started having all the different surgeries, you had turned me on to Brad Willis's Warrior Pose. And that was a fantastic book that really helped me get through those tough times. And of course, your friendship and support. And now looking at your book, it was a great read. It was a painful read because I was put right back in those times. And I was going through my own pain. And I felt like I could have been more there for you as a friend of what you were going through. But unless you've had cancer, I don't think there's any way you can know what somebody's going through.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I've also learned, by the way, that, and I totally get this, that some people just want to read a book about cancer. And I get it. Cancer is really scary. It's scary. I'm still scared by it. But ultimately, the book really isn't about cancer. It's about beauty. It's about love. It's about finding your voice. It's about being less alone. Cancer is the vessel or whatever. I can't think of the right word right now, but it's really not about cancer.
During my hospital, because I had to stay in an old folks' home for about 6 months, they didn't let me go home. That was part of the insurance business. It was like, well, you're gonna have to stay in this. It's supposed to be a rehab center, but we don't have those in this country anymore. So it was an old folks' home. And at some point during the process, I caught staph. At which point, from that point forward, the only people that could come in had to wear, they could only come in a certain amount of times a day to keep them safe. And then they would have to put on a hazmat suit, like no kidding, a real, the whole big yellow suit to come in and feed me and do whatever else that they were doing. They'd have to come in and do my wound care, daily or whatever. It was just kind of a. So anyway, you spend several months where the only contact you have is somebody in a yellow beekeeper suit, it looks like. And it was, it was kind of interesting to have, and I think it does change where you come out, after a few months.
Sure.
I think it changes who you are, and it's kind of interesting, the stuff that the human, that we'll deal with, and just sort of keep moving on. And
Yeah, it certainly laid some humility in my life.
yes, the humility was the best part. The humility is the
Sure.
thing I carry with me. It's like
Yep.
that's the best part. I enjoy it. I love my humility.
There's no doubt we all get humbled at some point, right? None of us get out of this life unscathed. None of
Right.
us.
Right. And when
It's
you're
just a
young,
question of,
you'll never be humbled, right? And it's the interesting thing about, different points of view. It's just, the young people, you're at that point. I don't even blame them. The funny thing is that, right now that what the biggest issues they're having is the under 30s getting the vaccine. You got to remember what it was like to be that age and go, nothing's going to kill me. If something does, I don't care. You know,
Right. Exactly.
you really don't
Exactly.
care if something's going to, as far
Well,
as
you have no concept,
right.
You don't
It's a
know
weird,
from. Everything's happening for the first time. Sure, death, that'll be another thrill, right?
right. Yes. Let's just move it on. Yeah.
We got
oh,
from
I'm
Mr.
seeing, I'm
Frank
seeing,
Blue, I highly recommend Life is a Ride. It will,
Expand your compassion.
passion.
I, you know, I, I, I admire Freddie so much. I met him back when we were doing,
Unworth, thank you
I
also for
met Freddie
sharing.
when we were doing Nine Lives at the Ellis Marsala Center. Um, Freddie's
Great
a great
guy.
guy.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that place is so wonderful. My God. What a
Yeah.
wonderful
And
place.
he said the same thing on a previous message. He said, when the doctors told him he had so little time left, he said, fuck that, Tommy needs me. I'm going to find a way out of this. And he did. He's here. So before we start to get towards wrapping up, and believe it or not, Mikey, we're now 10 minutes over, so we're right at an hour, even though we were 10 minutes late.
Yeah. You see how that
Um,
works? Time is
I
a
want
funny
to see,
thing.
I want to let you have you let people know where they can get the book.
Yes.
So it's available on all bookstores online. So if you wanted to buy through a New Orleans bookstore, they wouldn't have it in their shop, but like Garden District bookstores, just go to their website. It's on Amazon. It's on, if you live in Oregon, you can get it at Powell's Books online. It's on Barnes and Noble. Virtually anywhere online, it's available.
And it's Life is
Nice.
a Ride. I'm looking.
Life is a Ride,
I
My
had it on my.
Unconventional Journey of Cancer Recovery.
I know you're
It's.
supposed to have a photo of it, Mikey.
I know. I'm looking for. I have my copy here because I was just catching up and reading.
I had a photo of it. I
By,
think I
by,
sent.
by the, by the way, I used to tell people up until a couple months ago that I would just give it away because I'd never wrote it to make money or anything like that, and that's certainly been true. I haven't made any money, but now Amazon is selling it for like $250. I don't
Gotcha.
control the price on Amazon, so if you really want to buy it for cheap, just go to Amazon.
There you go.
There it
Yes,
is.
it's a wonderful cover. Life is a ride, and it's blue. And if nothing else, it's a great photo that you can put in your thing. But it's a quick read too. It actually, it's your editor did a great job because I think it's something you can read in an afternoon, and it's full of hope. And
Indeed.
I
Full
just
of hope. That's a great sell point right there, man. It's full of hope. Can't have enough of that in this world.
over the weekend I read another book by Andy Weir. I don't know if you guys are familiar with The Martian. He wrote The Martian, and he just wrote another book called The Hail Mary Project. And anyway, The Martian was a great book, and so was this other one. So go buy Chris's book first, but while you're there, you can always buy a couple other books. If you want to read something that's kind of fun.
Well, thank you for
Well,
coming
well,
on and
damn you
talking
guys,
about it.
I had a whole list of questions to ask you guys,
Oh no,
but
if you want to ask some questions, we got time. We ain't got nowhere.
We got time. We don't have any sponsors. What do you think?
Yeah.
We have.
so I asked one already about Jazz Fest, what you guys thought about whether there would be Jazz Fest. One other question I'll ask now is maybe your listeners know this, and maybe you guys have told me, but I don't remember. How do you guys know each other?
You want to do that one, Paul?
Oh yeah, Mikey was the sound man for Dash Rip Rock back in the early days of rock and roll, and Fred was their drummer. And when Fred split, he and Bill have a love-hate relationship. So of course Fred had to steal his sound man, who was the best young sound man in town. And Mikey came out on the road with us until he didn't. And then he went on to do far better things than work sound for live
The
bands.
funny
He's
thing was, is
mixed.
it took 2 years for you guys to make enough money to actually pay me to come out with you. When you, because I stuck around with Dash for a few years after Fred left, and it took a little while for
Well,
you to actually.
how could you leave? He got to play Joey Ramone in the Dash show whenever they would used to date it. He would come out and be Joey Ramone because he'd let his hair hang in his face, and he's a
I
big,
had
tall, lanky
sunglasses,
fella.
and
So,
the
he had
funnest
his
one of those
name.
is the Palladium. They really thought people were handing me drugs as I was making my way back out to the sound. They thought I was really Joey Ramone, and I wound up back at front of house with pockets full of drugs. I mean, they were just shoving them in my pockets. They were like going afterwards, going, "I wonder what this one is." Blue one, and here's a red one. What do you think they do? And so, Hokey was always like, "Give me one of them blue ones. I'll try it out. I'll tell you what it does."
But he got saved from the road, and he wound up making records for most of the '90s. Great records, rock records, rap records, brass band records. He really was a part of the New Orleans music scene until the hurricane sent 35 feet of water over his house and studio.
Another funny thing is we're going to have Chris Finney on next week, and Chris Finney is actually the guy who came on
To
and
replace you in
to replace me. And it was typical. I got a call from Fred, and Fred goes, "Hey man, listen, would you mind if we use Chris for a while? Because he's so cheap. We can get him so cheap." And I'm like, and luckily I just got a call from House of Blues. Sonny had called me and said, "Hey man, are you
didn't know
busy?"
that.
And I took the House of Blues gig for several years. But it was funny because he was like, "I don't want you to get mad because I love you, but he's so cheap."
So you took a gig for better money where you could stay home.
It's about
And
the
Finney
same money,
came
but I
out.
could stay home, and I just had
Yeah,
Lindsay, and it really was
right.
the right time for me to get off the road, and it was
Hmm.
actually a blessing for me. So I wasn't mad,
So he
about.
produced all of my solo records from after Loose Parts until the last one was Between Friends, which his studio flooded and we lost some of the record, but he saved most of them on his hard drives. We were able to finish it in Nashville,
Yeah, we finished that
which
one
is
in
the kind of
Nashville.
friend.
That was
He lost his own record. He didn't save his own record, but he saved mine. That's the kind of friend he is.
yes, we did save, and I love that Between Friends record. It was The funny thing, just we should talk about that one sometime. Just where the whole idea for that particular, but that was basically that started off
That's
as
another.
yes, that started off as Paul was writing kid songs. We'll have to talk about that another time. But
We'll do it another time,
yeah, but that was
and we'll have Chris back another time. We didn't
yes,
talk. We didn't talk much about the Threadheads and your adventures into the New Orleans, the underbelly of the New Orleans music scene.
Yeah, that may be more than one episode.
yeah. You were deep
We'll,
in the
we'll have to
underbelly,
see. We'll have to see what stories there are that you can actually tell.
huh? There's that. Which ones are you
Or
comfortable telling?
maybe I'll just write another book.
There you go.
I love it. I love it. Well, it's
Somebody,
great
hey
to
Chris,
see
do you have any
Great to-
superhero questions? Just came across
Yeah, because
Oh, I saw that.
Friday
That's from.
Friday
that's the Mark
superheroes.
Rosenbaum thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause
Geez,
we
I
do
don't
a
know if I have.
superhero thing on Fridays. So
Yeah, I'm not sure I have any questions, but product placement. I will give Mark a plug for Rose Tree Glass in Algiers. So buy
there you go.
blown
And man,
glass
they are the
from Mark.
they are the superhero of glass blowers in Rose Tree Glass in Algiers.
There you go.
That's right. Hey, Mark, you send us something. We will definitely push you every show. Just send us something. Send us an ad, something. We'll put your picture at the end of the show, just to go. Here you go. Go to the glass blowers. Here they are.
Another cup of coffee sponsored by Rose Tree Glass,
That's
right?
right. That's
Well, let's
right.
not don't make him jump off the high dive, because Mikey and I got big requests. I mean, we want coffee, so
Yeah, yeah. Well, maybe he could blow us. He could blow us the cups that we, drink the coffee in.
There you go. Hey, that would be nice.
Right.
A hand blown coffee cup from Rose Tree Glass. Wow, you're
Look at
thinking
us.
I
big,
hope he's
man.
still listening. Hope
Well,
he's
yeah, and then we're
listening.
gonna, we'll have the ACOC cups. We'll sell them to all. You guys can all have your own
Yeah, we're gonna make another cup of coffee cups, and we're gonna sell millions to the 12
millions.
listeners we.
Millions. Everybody's gonna buy one. We're gonna get one. We're gonna do like Starbucks and do one for every week. So we'll just put a date on it and be like, "Hey, do you have the one from this?" It's like wearing something new every day. Mark says product placement. That's right. We can get some product placement right here in this show. It'll be amazing.
Well, all
Real
right,
quick, I
man.
wanted to
It's
say
great
before you
talking to you,
go,
Chris.
for people Jazz Fest, unfortunately, I will say this: the weather was so perfect this year. It would have been such a
Stop.
gorgeous. I'm sorry,
Stop.
guys,
Why you
but
want to do that to me?
well,
Why would
it's
you want to do that to me?
true. I mean, it's raining now, but it's been so cool, and it's
It was
just
great. It was great. Now you're making me sad. Why you want
yes.
to do that?
Well, we did get to sit out in Jazz Fest in place, and it was nice. It was cool outside. It was
Yeah, I fested
beautiful.
in place with my brother Johnny. That was fun. And then Allison and I fested in place the day that I sang. We did I danced around and ate crawfish strudel.
Crawfish strudel. That doesn't sound right.
That was
Craw-
awesome. That's my favorite dish at Jazz Fest.
strudel?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's awesome.
I mean, crawfish Monica's one thing. Crawfish bread's another.
Yeah, crawfish
Stru-
Monica, I like it, but everybody's been there.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Crawfish or something different.
I figure that sounds like one of the ones that you go to. There's no line, and you're like, "Hey, screw it! I'm not waiting in that damn Monica line. I'm gonna go over here and get the strudel." And then you try it, and you're like, "Damn, this is good. Why
Oh
isn't there a
yeah.
line here?" You know?
I'm gonna vote for the Little Dizzy's trout. That
Yeah.
trout
Oh yeah,
paquet
the trout
is.
paquet. Oh yeah, that's a big favorite of mine. Oh yeah.
Even
Oh
though,
yeah. Now I'm starting to salivate. So thank you, fellas. Now I'm going to have to go and eat some crap food to make up for the Jazz Fest I don't have.
did you guys see what Lorelai said? She said, "Nah, it would have rained for sure. Maybe a tornado." You know?
Thank you, Lorelai. It's always good to look on the bright side.
That's right.
A tornado would have been part of the charm. Just
A
all part of
It
the
has
POA
charm.
been
gumbo,
before.
a PQA. What's
You
the
know,
PQA gumbo? Oh, it's at the same booth as a PQA. What's the PQA gumbo? Do you know?
PQA
I don't know.
gumbo.
Is
It's
it like
I
a
don't know,
quail
Mark.
or something kind of thing? And
He's using code now. He's like letting us know he's cooler Jazz Fest than we are.
yeah, yeah, like the kids, they all have
Got
those
the underground.
an
He's a
acronym.
Or
vendor out
maybe
there.
that.
Rose Tree Glass is a vendor out there. They get the underground Jazz Fest food.
Right,
Or I'm
right.
thinking maybe it was a message for his Q followers. Don't
Ooh,
discount that.
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
the
I'm
number
gonna have to
13 or
go on
something.
that.
Is it 41 or 42? I don't know. It's one of those. I can tell you this: if you get there in the mornings and you're working Jazz Fest, you can get coffee freezes at about 9:30 in the morning. The coffee
You know,
people.
I was thinking that I should have gone to the Republican National Convention and claimed to be JF Jr., come back from the dead to accept the Republican nomination. Because those dumb fucks don't know what he looked like. I could have had my hair coiffed. I could have said that I aged while I was in the sea. You know, the sea
Well,
kind of put
the
some years on
the
me.
other thing is it doesn't really matter what you say as long as you say that that's you. It
That's
doesn't
right, as
matter
long as I
what you
say I'm
do.
JFK Jr. We could have hung Pence at the National Convention, and Trump and I would be running the country right now. I'd be feeding that fat fuck so much McDonald's he would explode within the first 100 days.
See, that would actually be a
Have
nice
another
little.
Big Mac, Donnie. Have another Big Mac. You're
Have
looking
another
good,
Big
baby.
Mac. Oh, you know what? I got you some fried chicken. Look, come on, fried
I got a
chicken.
movie for you. It's called French Fry Me. Check it out. It's you, baby. It's you.
Some cheesecake. You want some cheesecake? Here you go. Here's the cheesecake. Put that on top of there.
Nobody's ever eaten McDonald's like you can. Stock it in there, man. Pour it in. Have a shake too.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing stuff. Pretty amazing stuff. Ah,
Yeah,
yes.
I would have had him bigger than the Trump baby. He'd have been floating above the White House, just a big old fat ogre, you know.
You're like, hey, man, you know you want this. You know you want this. Come on, have a McNugget. Throw a McNugget on your Big Mac. You got this.
Next thing you know, he could have been our greatest weapon, you know, because once that McDonald's gas hits that old bloated fucker, he shoots right over to Russia and lands on Putin. War's over. It'd take 4 cranes to pick him up.
Always look at the bright side of life. That's right.
I'm trying, Mike. I'm trying. All right. Well, this has been more than fun, and we should do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. You know, he did join us at like 6 in the morning over there in California.
Yeah, thanks for
Like I
sharing
told
your
you,
story. And then, again, you sharing your story brought a lot of people out on our show today to share theirs. And that's the whole point of your book. And that's what I really thank you for, is making people feel less alone.
Yeah,
Thank you guys so much.
absolutely, man. So I'm going to play our little outro thing, and you guys hang out for a second. And as far as everybody on the air, we enjoyed it. We'll see you on Friday with Lou, Chicago Lou,
Lou
in the superhero review. That's right. You know, jinx, jinx, jinx. So we'll see you guys Friday. And then next Wednesday, we got Chris Finney coming on. Professor Finney teaches at Tulane.
Professor.
He
That's
teaches,
very exciting.
he teaches the next generation how to possibly make money in the music business. So, you know, if you want to
I
know
wish
how
he
they
would have
do
taught
it.
me that. He didn't teach me that when he was my friend.
They didn't have those college courses when you were a
You know,
kid.
he never liked me.
You'll have to find out about why he never taught you that.
I'm liked, but I'm not well liked.
This is reminding me of a Smothers Brothers routine.
We love the classics. Of course, we're all about the classics.
Yes, we're all about the classics. All right, guys. Well, Chris, thanks again. And Mikey, I'll see you Friday.
Yep, see you on Friday.
Well, I used to keep my money in a cookie jar. It was shaped like a cat, it was a present from my brother. I read a lot of books, but I couldn't see between the lines. I'll have another cup of coffee if you don't mind. Well, her hair is as black as an alleyway, and it used to be red, and it used to be blonde. Truth is, her hair changes color all the time. I'll have another cup of coffee if you don't mind. I'll have another cup of coffee if you don't mind. Well, I'm staring at her shoulder, but it's not what I see when I hear 2 fellas fighting in the booth across from me. So I wipe away the ashes from an empty counter seat.